The opinions expressed on the radio program by the host, co-hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Genesis Radio, www.genesisradio.com, Genesis Radio's owners, management, or affiliates.
Good evening and welcome to GenesisRadio.com. My name is Kendall Stevenson. I am the host of The Empowerment Show. The Empowerment Show is part of Unity in the Community. Unity in the Community means one thing. We are trying to unite and bring the community together. I always start off with a moment of gratitude. I like to let something out the bag. Hey, Terry, today is my 1 year anniversary. So 1 year ago, I was sitting in that chair over there, and a young man decided to put the mic in my mouth. And since then, we've had a litany of shows. We've had some amazing people on the show. So I like to say thank me. My 1 year anniversary, right on. So those are the things that I'm grateful for. Today, my man Ronald Yates and I, we're going to sit down and we're gonna chop it up about some of the things that are going on. Recently, we had a young man. Yeah, I call him a young man. His name is Donnie Swaggart. This young man decided to get up on a podium and tell Black people what they should think and how they should feel. It was horrifying to me. All I saw was the oppressor standing on there telling Black people what they should think and how they should feel. And he kind of tried to disgrace us. Another thing that went on this week was a young man at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Okay, he was talking to all the Puerto Rican people out there and decided to say that they come from an island of garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Did you imagine that?
Yep.
An island of garbage. And any Puerto Rican that want to vote for people like that, you get what you deserve. That's all I can say. You vote for shit, and that's what you get. Excuse my French, because we got a choice here between sugar and ish. And I'm going with the sugar because sugar is sweet. Sugar gonna take care of me. Right on. Mr. Yates, what's happening? Say hey.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? And I looked at that video of I guess he's Pastor Swaggart.
Yeah.
Very much in the mold of his father.
Mm.
You know, I guess it's the family business, selling God. And yeah, he was basically, I guess he's telling us that our choices, political choices, are wrong, right? That we should be supporting Trump because Kamala Harris is evil, and that the Democrats support things that are ungodly, as if the Republicans are the godly group, right? And I will say this, some of the Democratic platform is a little bizarre, right? As it relates to things like allowing young children to make a decision about sex change, sexual reassignment surgery, allowing prisoners the ability to undergo sexual reassignment surgery in prison. Who's paying for that, right? That makes no sense when you have people out here who can't afford prescription medication, who can't see a doctor, right? Some people are turned down. The insurance companies refuse them elective surgery. Some of these surgeries are necessary. So if I can't have, say, surgery to repair a heart valve, how are you going to allow somebody in prison to have sexual reassignment surgery?
Well, I tell you, yeah, I mean, I like the way that sounds, but we know that in reality, they have what they know as earmarks and money that's allocated for certain things. So when it comes to, let's say, money for the homeless, that money is already allocated. It's there. It's for the homeless. And money for people in prison All that money is already there for. But yeah, the thing about somebody getting a sex change or those type of things really don't concern me because I'm not looking to get a sex change.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't really. The thing about gay people don't bother me because I'm not gay and I'm not looking to marry anyone gay. And my opinion, just on the abortion thing, I really think that should be between daddy, mommy, priest, and the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the government should have any rights to be in your bedroom to tell you what you should and what you should not be able to do.
I got one question in regards to the sex change thing in prison. Is there any actual proof that has taken place, or is that just a rumor or a conspiracy theory?
Well, there is a clip of a speech that Kamala Harris was doing when she was talking about prisoners should have that right. Now, this is just a segment. You didn't hear the whole thing. They'll never allow you to hear the whole thing, right?
Okay.
Because then, what they're trying to bring out, it may sound different when you hear the entirety of it, right?
Right.
So it's going to give you just that little clip. So it strongly suggests that she is in support of that. Has it actually happened? No. It's kind of like what they're saying, defund the police. How many departments have been, defunded?
No. And just the fact that they used the way that it was worded, is she said that she agrees with them, that she thinks that they should have it. So by saying that someone should have it is also saying that they don't have it. So I would go with the latter and say no, it hasn't happened as of yet, Terry.
Okay.
I mean, just trying to think logically. I don't think, just by the wording that was used, I don't think that it has happened yet.
Probably not, right? I can't say for sure,
right?
But probably, at least not on a large scale, right? But what you said about religion and politics. Now, in this country, it's supposed to be two separate things, right? The separation of church and state, right? Where they come together, right? And they formed an unholy alliance. And here's the thing. When you go to work and around family and friends, they tell you should not talk about or discuss politics or religion. But the two things that have the greatest influence in your life is politics and religion. But they tell you not to discuss it, right? It does not make sense. You should discuss it, right? If you discuss it, if you have these open conversations and you're a thinking person, well, then somebody cannot come along like Mr. Swaggart or Pastor Swaggart and tell you, well, this is what I think based on my interpretation of the scriptures. You
got to remember something. These are the same type of people that during slavery, when they wanted to have the slaves emulate them and become Christians, well, when the slaves became Christian, did they free them?
Well, no.
No. So they were Christians enslaving Christians. So this is not even about religion. Is that they just don't have any respect for you, regardless to what you do.
Well, if you go back to the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, I believe it was the Portuguese that went to the Pope and asked the Pope for permission or the Pope's advice as it relates to enslaving Africans. And he said that as long as they are not Christians, then you can reduce them to servitude. But when they became Christians, now you're violating, the Pope's, I guess the Pope's, maybe he wrote a papal bull or something saying that, if these people are not Christian, yes, you can enslave them. But now that they're Christians, how do you justify keeping them enslaved?
Brainwash?
Well, absolutely. And to this day, right, we're still dealing with the effects of what happened, I guess, first in Africa when we were, taken into captivity, and then here for, hundreds of years on the plantation. So now, the plantation has shifted. There's no bars anymore, right? There's no quote unquote overseer, right? There's no cotton to pick, but you're no less on a plantation. You're no less in a state of mental incarceration.
That has to be in your mind, because that has to be the mental slavery part.
Mm-hmm.
And I would call that Stockholm syndrome, to where you fall in love with your oppressors. And not only that, what I see, like people like Mark Robinson who want to emulate.
Yeah.
They want to emulate their oppressors, like the Tim Scotts. These people, they haven't just fallen in love with their oppressors. They want to be their oppressors. They want to think, act, and speak the same way that their oppressors does. Like if you notice the way that these brothers, the way that they talk about this sister, the things that they say, they call her all out of her name. I've heard them call her the B word, the C word. Like she's a piece of garbage, or more or less like she's a criminal. And I've heard brothers talk about this woman that way. And I had to say to myself, is this the way you talk to your mother? Is this the way you want your sister, your girlfriend, your aunt? Is this the way you believe that women should be treated?
I think for Kamala Harris, this may be the perfect storm. So for the last several years, you've had Black women, the most educated class in the country. So while you have a lot of brothers who are applauding these sisters' achievement, there are some brothers who are not so happy. Because, we were talking, Terry and I were talking on a previous show about there's always this little power struggle that goes on, right? I guess you might call it the household politics. They say, you got to pay the cost to be the boss. What happens when she now is making the most of the money? She's now the breadwinner. Where do you fit into this equation? Now that she's going out and getting the advanced degrees, where do you fit in terms of, is there now an intellectual divide as well? So there's some brothers who are not happy with this. In this country, misogyny has been an issue from the time this country was founded. Then, on top of that,
founded or taken over?
Or taken over.
There we go.
Right?
Okay.
So now you have a Democratic Party that has taken the Black vote for granted for years. So now this could be, in some cases, backlash against the Democratic Party. So if you put all this together, right, it's kind of like the perfect storm for her, right? There's so many people in this country that are hesitant to vote for a woman. For America to say that, we're the shining beacon on the hill and the last bastion of democracy, these countries that are not democratic have had women in office, the highest office in the land for decades.
Yeah,
right?
Sure did. Sure have.
But in this country, we're supposed to be so advanced, but we still have not, right? And because of these prejudices against women, right? Even some women will not vote for another woman.
Yeah, I was speaking to some women. I tell you the funny thing. So these women, they had the signs. Somebody was telling me they had the Trump signs out, and that when they actually went in the home to speak to the woman, that the woman said, "I'm actually voting for Kamala."
Right.
Because she said, "I have to put it up because my husband won't. He's not going to vote for Kamala."
Right.
So we still have that the male, especially I think among Caucasians, because a lot of sisters, they're not going for that.
No.
They're not gonna have that. We're gonna have it's gonna be a thing.
I think women across the board, right, are going to support Kamala Harris. And I think that, if you look in places like North Carolina, record voter turnout. Here in Pennsylvania, record voter turnout, which tend to favor the Democrats, right? And I know that the media is reporting, and they're saying the polls are suggesting that this is an extremely close race.
Which polls? The stripper polls?
Yeah. Because, to be honest, I do not believe this race is as close as they're saying.
I don't think so either.
And I base that on the fact that when Trump was elected in 2016, By 2018, the midterms, the candidates he backed lost.
Right.
In 2020, the candidates he backed lost. 2022, candidates he backed lost.
You saw what happened to his administration, the cabinet, Kelly, and the whole.
Mhm.
Let me tell you what surprised me. This is what really surprised me is when Mitch McConnell,
Mhm.
when he came out and said that he was not going to support Trump.
Mhm.
That was the thing for me. Yeah, and Mitch McConnell, he's like the Republican. He is the standard of what a Republican is. He will not agree with anything and fight tooth and nail.
Mhm.
And when he came and said, I'm not endorsing Trump.
Well, he also said that Trump has destroyed the Republican Party,
Mm-hmm.
and he has. Excuse me. If you look at the decline of the Republican Party, this was the party of Lincoln. This was the party of Reagan. This was the party of John McCain.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have a party that is under the control of a convicted felon, right? Whose objective is to gain power for himself, not for the country, not for the Republican Party, not for anyone but himself. You know, he keeps talking about the border.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a bill, bipartisan bill, that even a Republican said, this is the best bill we're going to get. Trump made a call and said, kill that bill.
That's right.
Because if you sign that bill, if that bill passes and they strengthen the border, I won't have anything to run on.
Mm-hmm.
Because what can I say?
Well, he's running on a lot of lies.
He's running on fear.
On fear.
That's it.
And he's using lies.
Well, yeah, they go hand in hand, but he's running on fear.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of the people coming up through the southern border. Fear of your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of the Democrats. Fear of
black people.
Everybody.
Right.
Right? It's just fear.
Isn't that why they go out and they buy their guns and all that good stuff?
Absolutely.
Because it's a funny thing, and I'm not going to get, I really don't want to get that racial, but they came in and took everything, and they murdered and killed and did all of these things when they came here, right? Mm-hmm. And now they're afraid of all of those people.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid. What are they afraid? Maybe they're going to come back. Maybe the Mexicans are going to come back and take California and Texas. What are they afraid of?
I don't know. Okay, in terms of fear, Dr. Frances Cress Welching, in her study, said that what Caucasians feared most was genetic annihilation.
Mm.
If you look at the people on the planet, right, most of the people, 3/4 of the people on this planet share certain traits in common. Dark hair, dark eyes.
Mm.
The only people you will find pretty much with, I don't want to say white skin because they're not white, but lighter skin,
mm-hmm.
green eyes, red hair, and freckles, stuff like that. According to, and blonde hair and blue eyes as well.
Mm-hmm.
According to Dr. Mendel, who will do early research in genetics, he said, look, those are genetic malformations.
Mm.
Those are recessive traits, right?
Just for those that understand, he's trying to tell you that it's a mutation.
This is the words that were used by Dr. Mendel, right? Who did the research. And if you do research into DNA, right, it'll tell you that there are dominant and there are recessive traits. Now, what happens is you have brothers, say, from places like Africa, coming across into Europe and marrying Caucasian women.
Mm.
The children are not white or not Caucasian. In this country, you have Caucasian women marrying black men marrying Caucasian women. The children are not Caucasian, right? So that is a problem, because if the dominant trait is the one that will be prevalent, then what happens to the recessive trait? It begins to die off. So that may be what is really the driving force behind wanting to end abortion.
Mm.
Now,
I get that, absolutely, But to average Joe Blow, you don't understand that. You're talking to someone that's probably on a higher plane or a higher level, someone that actually has the ability to get together with other people and they can conspire to have this thing happen. We're not at that level,
right?
We just can assume what's going on. We can't say exactly for sure. So just to keep our CYA a little bit. Right?
Yeah. But this is just what Dr. Cress-Welching studied, right? And this is her hypothesis, right? That this is the fear of, genetic annihilation. And, there have been a number of books written, and I mentioned one before we came on the air, written by Pat Roberts. I believe it's Pat Robertson. And it was called The Death of the West. And this book has been around 30 years, man. I read it when it first came out because I was interested in. I heard him speaking about his book, and he talked about how by, I think he said 2030, which is right around the corner, Caucasians would be a minority in Europe, and how in the years immediately after that, they would be a minority here in this country. And I think it was during that time that the wheels began to turn in terms of ending Roe v. Wade, right? And forcing women to have children, Caucasian.
So do we have Roe v. Wade at the time?
When he wrote the book? Yeah.
Okay.
This was in the 90s when this book came out.
Okay.
So yeah, Roe v. Wade, I think is 73. So it was around, but at that point, people becoming aware of the decline of the European birth rate, and they realize something's got to be done, right? And it's got to be done quickly, because now we have China with 2 billion people, India with more than 2 billion people, right? And Africa is projected to outpace both of them. I'm
surprised it hasn't outpaced the world. I mean, it is the largest continent in the world.
Second largest.
Well, who's the first?
Asia, because Asia's so Asia's so spread out, right? But Africa's the largest, I guess, contiguous continent, but Asia's so spread out, right? That Africa will come in second.
I always thought Africa was first. You could fit probably all of Europe and other continents in it.
You could fit Europe, America, and I want to say Greenland into Africa and still have space.
Is that North and South America?
Yes.
Okay.
And still have space.
That's a hell of a lot of room to go through.
It is a huge continent.
I'm just wondering about the resources now. With a continent so large, that we have a lot of resources that come from that area, like in the Congo. I don't know if people understand what's going on in Congo, and how the resources are being taken out of Congo just for your cell phone. You got a lot of things that are going on over there, probably just about as much as what's going on in Gaza.
Well, what's been going on in Africa has been going on for centuries. When the Europeans came down into Africa, in fact, it was the Portuguese that first came down, and during that time, the whole continent of Africa, the Europeans called Guinea. So they came down the coast, the Guinea coast, and they wanted to establish first trading post. One of the largest was in Ghana. And once in Ghana, well, you see that the king, the queen, and others were wearing gold rings, gold amulets, gold earrings. So of course, the means of exchange in Europe was gold. So now they decide we want to establish a permanent trading post here. And during that time, the king of what would be later called Ghana kind of got wind or an idea of what was happening here. And he said, no, I don't want you to be here permanently. Well, they had superior weaponry, and they said, no, we're not leaving because you have what we need. So I think it's around 1481, they started building a fortress, and it became Elmina Castle, the largest slave holding facility in West Africa. So they knew what they were going to do back in the 15th century, and they came and they saw the valuable resources there, and they said, okay, we need to have those. We have wars to fight in Europe. We need gold. Europe is a resource poor continent, right? What do they have? They have a little bit of gold, but that was used up. And they have wood. What else do they have? So they needed these things to fight their wars and to enrich themselves. And, later on in the 19th century, when they had the Berlin Conference, they decided, okay, we're going to divide Africa up. Each European colonial power will get a piece, and this will be yours, and you will just siphon off the resources from that particular country, and that'll be yours into perpetuity.
And that brings us into the 21st century, where they're just taking it. They're fighting, clawing each other and killing each other. It's horrible, the things that are going on over there in the Congo and in the Sudan.
Well, it's funny, right? For this country, the United States, everywhere that we fought in, say, the past 30 years, there's some vital resource there. Oil, water, gold, something that's there, right? After 9/11, we were told that this crime was committed by Osama bin Laden, and that he was hiding in a cave in Afghanistan. Well, okay, that you can justify, right? Well, within weeks, all of a sudden, Saddam Hussein had to disarm. There was no evidence to suggest that Saddam Hussein was involved in the planning of 9/11 or in the execution of the plan, but it didn't matter. He was sitting on rivers of oil. And prior to this invasion of Iraq, it was Dick Cheney and a group of others who got together, oil companies, mind you. They got together with Dick Cheney, and they looked at the remaining reserves of oil. And they found they identified Iraq as being one that has a huge supply of oil. Next thing you know, the bombs go off. And one of the first things that the troops did was gain control of the oil wells, the oil fields.
Yeah. What was that? Was that the time of weapons of mass destruction?
That was the code word.
Yeah,
right?
that was the prelude. Let's get us in there.
Right. Weapons of mass destruction that they never found.
Right. I always said it was the son finishing up what the daddy didn't finish.
Right.
Well, he did make that statement, that man tried to kill my daddy.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was a lie, In fact, if you go back to the first Gulf War, after the first Gulf War in 91, the International Atomic Energy, their researchers or investigators were sent to Iraq to search for weapons of mass destruction. Well, at some point, Saddam Hussein expelled them from the country, but they had already completed 95% of their work and found nothing, no weapons of mass destruction. So it was known from back in 1995 that there were no weapons of mass destruction, because how would he get them?
Well, not to say that Gaddafi was the greatest guy, but Gaddafi kept control over the Middle East. He kept things in line and in order.
Actually, it was Saddam Hussein who kept them in order.
Saddam Hussein, my bad. That's who I meant to say. Saddam Hussein.
Gaddafi wanted to unify the Africa,
Yes,
and their currency.
Right.
Gaddafi was actually what he wanted to do was establish a gold-backed currency. Gold-backed currency would have destroyed the dollar, the U.S. economy.
That's why he had to go.
He had to go. Saddam Hussein also was thinking about that as well. That's why he had to go. And there's other people, same thing, that had to go. Down in Venezuela, they had prior to Maduro, they had Chavez, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you go back and you do a little research, you find that during this time, he developed cancer.
Mm.
Several Central and South American leaders had cancer at the same time. The Brazilian president, Chavez, and several others. Chavez is the only one that died. Now, how is it all of them have cancer suddenly? So not only does Venezuela have rivers of oil, Venezuela has a reserve of gold nearly equal to us in Africa.
Mm.
They're not going to let that stay there. And down in Haiti, Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Nobody knows how it got that way.
Mm.
I should say nobody, but a lot of us don't know how.
A lot of us don't know.
The reason Haiti is so poor right now is because Haiti had to pay reparations to the French.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
What? Yes, from the 18th.
What they paying reparations for? Enslaving them?
Well, because the French said they lost valuable, right, a valuable source of income. So they made the Haitians pay back what they lost. You have to keep in mind of the French colonial holdings, Haiti was the third richest or the third most profitable of their holdings.
Don't you know the origin of the word blackmail came from Haiti?
Oh, really?
The Europeans have to pay to pass Hispaniola because the Haitians had it locked down. Yeah. And that the Europeans came with that word blackmail.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what happened. They had to pay them back to the 1980s. So they drained the Haitian economy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, the French, backed by the U.S., made the Haitians pay up.
Where's Master Musa when you need him?
Exactly. Exactly.
You know? But in today's time, right now, we're trying to deal with this. We got the politics of the day, and the election is next week. So I would really like everybody to get out and cast their vote. I don't really care which way you vote. I mean, I do, but I'm just glad that you have the privilege and the honor and still have the ability to vote. Because if certain people get in office, you may not have that choice anymore. What did he say? 4 years?
Well, he said that he was going to be a dictator on day one. And what I find amusing is that people say, well, he doesn't mean that. Donald Trump does not say it if he does not mean it, right? People like Kamala Harris and others have used the term dangerous to describe Donald Trump. So one of the things that Trump supporters say, if you talk about Donald Trump, they'll say you have Trump derangement syndrome, right? Okay. So, well, their thing is you have the derangement. You're deranged. So on January 6th, what we saw was people storming the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
They tell you, well, the doors were open, right? This is what they tell you, that the doors were open. Well, if the doors open, why are you breaking the windows? They'll tell you, or Trump says, it was a day of love.
You're not supposed to believe your lying eyes.
Right. But when do you try to kill the vice president at a love fest? When do you try to kill the Speaker of the House at a love fest? But these folks, his staunchest supporters, will tell you, hey, you have derangement syndrome because you don't see what we saw. You don't hear what we hear. So when you go to Madison Square Garden, and now this was done in the 30s, they had the American Nazi Party. They called it the Bund. So when they had their rally in the 30s, clearly they were in support of Hitler. Okay. So now, 80 years later, we have Trump going to Madison Square Garden. So some in the Democratic Party said, well, this is going to be like a Nazi rally. Well, the first person to speak was a comedian who got up and who insulted not just all Latinos in general, but in particular, Puerto Ricans.
Puerto Ricans.
Who were sitting, there's a Puerto Rican delegation in Madison Square Garden, sitting there listening to this. And what's interesting is 3 weeks ago, Donald Trump showed up in the South Bronx and went to a barbershop to court Black and Hispanic voters.
I remember that.
Okay. 3 weeks later, now you have a comedian denigrating the people you just asked to support you. What sense does that make? But of course, if you say something about that, oh, he didn't mean that. He never said it. Listen, if you are running for office, particularly the highest office in the land, you have to be careful about what is said in your name. Because this comedian, nobody really knows his name, but we know the name Trump.
Well, they know him now.
Right. And we know whose campaign brought him there.
That's right.
Right. So if you're not sure what he's going to say, why would you put him out there? And why didn't anybody shut off his mic? Or say, hey, wait a minute, this does not reflect the views of this campaign. Nobody said it until 6 hours later.
Let me let you hold that thought. Thank you for tuning in to GenesisRadio.com. Again, my name is Kendall Stevenson, and this is the Empowerment Show, which we are part of Unity in the Community. If you'd like to give us a call, the telephone number would be 888-304-4401. If you'd like to join in on the conversation, or you can view us live on Facebook. That's at GenesisRadio.com. Thank you.
Yeah, so, I don't believe that the race is as close as they're saying because of all these losses that Trump, his candidates that he's hand-selected, have lost race after race. Now, in terms of the Democratic Party, we're looking at the top of the ticket. But this backlash, if it is against the Democratic Party, is going to affect the down ballot races as well.
Of course.
Which are just as important because the Republicans control the House. If this race, well, they'll control it on January 6th, right? When it's time to certify the ballot. Well, already Speaker Johnson has already intimated that he just might not certify the ballot, the vote, if Trump is not declared the winner. So, and we have lawsuits that have already been filed in anticipation of him losing.
Right.
Down in North Carolina, a North Carolina election official last week said we should give our delegates to Trump already. Election hasn't even occurred yet. And they want to give him these electoral votes already. And that's not the only state. So I don't know if this race is as close as they're saying. I think that the Republican Party realizes that once Biden bowed out of the race and Kamala Harris took over, Trump really did not have a message or any way to attack Kamala Harris. With Biden, you could say, well, Biden is, 80 years old,
he's old.
right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So he has, mental decline. What are you going to say about Kamala Harris? She's younger than you.
Well, they've been saying a lot of things about Kamala Harris.
But I'm trying to, in terms of mental decline.
Right. Well, he's trying to say that too.
Right.
He's saying that she's mentally incapable of doing what she should do. Or the kicker, the big one to me is that, well, she's a woman, so she's too emotional to be president.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's stupid.
She was stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
But
or she's a whore.
But if she's stupid, why wouldn't you agree to a second or third debate?
Well, you know why.
Well, because he knows he lost. And he's been making excuses. Well, it was ABC, right? They weren't fair to Trump, right? They didn't allow me to expound on my answers, but they allowed her. Then it's CNN. I'm owed an apology for, and I think from an interview from years back.
Yeah.
Anything to avoid going on a network that is not friendly.
Well, he's always crying the victim. He's the biggest whining crybaby I ever. Everything is always me. Why they're picking on me? He sounds like Charlie Brown. Why is somebody always picking on me?
Right.
Because that's it. But he says all kind of nasty things and things about whomever. And right as soon as you say something about him, it's like, oh no, please no,
Right.
don't talk about me like that.
Mhm.
You know, I'm such a nice guy. He's not a nice guy.
Well, I was doing a little biblical research the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to see where Trump fit in. And in the book of Revelations, around chapter 13, they talk about three individuals. There's the devil,
Mm-hmm.
there's the dragon, and then there's the beast. And I found this to be interesting. The dragon, they said, had a fatal wound to the head. And the dragon is who gave power to the beast. Now, the dragon continued to live, so it's not a fatal wound. It was a wound that should have been fatal, but it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's go back to Butler, Pennsylvania. Donald Trump said he was shot by an AR-15 style weapon, right? So now the Bible says that the dragon made a miraculous recovery. Donald Trump, the next day, had a bandage on his ear.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are, months out from this event, this so-called assassination attempt. Do you see even a scar on Donald Trump's ear?
No. When he was out playing golf a couple of days later, he didn't have a Band-Aid on, and I didn't see any scar.
Right.
Not at all.
Right.
And it was funny because if the guy was shooting this way, and
Mhm.
he's shooting this way,
Mhm.
why was there blood all over his face?
Right.
I'm saying if you got shot in the ear, wouldn't the blood go that way?
Was that blood?
Yeah, no
You know?
question.
I don't know, because there's not even a scar, which would indicate that something hit him, right? I mean, even if you get hit with a rock hard enough,
Mhm.
right, to draw blood, maybe leave a little scar, but nothing. So, when you think about Donald Trump, there's got to be something behind him other than just the Republican Party. There's got to be some energy, negative energy behind him.
Mhm.
Because you got to figure, in 2015, Donald Trump came down his escalator and said, I'm running for president. Okay. Donald Trump defeated seasoned politicians to win a Republican nomination. Then he goes on to win the presidency. But Donald Trump is in control of the Republican Party. How? How is he in control of the Supreme Court? How was he in control of local legislatures?
Because he's a demon.
See, there's got to be something behind him other than just Republicans.
Mm.
Because if you think about it, initially, the Republican Party didn't want Donald Trump. Mitch McConnell said he's not going to be our nominee.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsey Graham, he called him a racist. His own running mate, J.D. Vance, said Donald Trump is the American Hitler.
Yep.
But now you've fallen in line,
Mm-hmm.
and now you're his running mate.
Because it's not about politics. It's not about policy. This race is not about any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
This is about, I don't know, good and evil, if you want to say.
Yeah, this is about power. This is about control,
Mhm.
right? This is more than just control over women's bodies, right? This is exercising control over the masses,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes I look at things and it makes me wonder. Now you go up 940 and they have these big Amazon style buildings,
Mhm.
but that's not Amazon. Some of these things I believe could be easily adapted to be holding facilities. There's no windows or anything.
Oh yeah, we discussed that. You talked about that once before. I was right. You discussed that once before.
Mhm.
It was cool. Yeah,
Mhm.
they said they got no windows.
No
so
windows or anything.
It just may be a hole in the facility.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And that's because you have to figure, right? They need large holding facilities. Going back about 20 years ago, there was a protest in New York.
right.
And what they did was they locked these people up in the old transit building. They turned it into a makeshift holding facility. Well, I guess that was maybe an experiment, right? On, locking up and holding large groups. Some of these buildings, they're all along major roadways.
The migrants you're talking about.
Not just the migrants, because they'll start with the migrants.
Right.
But he already said, what about his political enemies?
There you go.
The Democrats, who he
Right.
said are evil. What about the generals that have spoken out against him, whether they're Republican or not?
The radio host,
TV
CNN.
show host, right? Jimmy Kimmel,
Mm-hmm.
MSNBC, Joe Scarborough, and a list of others. He's already said he pulled the license from places like CBS. So when you talk about
Doesn't it have to be a judge or something that can do that? I mean, he doesn't have the right to do that.
Trump said the other day that he will have extreme power.
Mm.
He said, as the president, you say close the border and the border is closed.
Mm.
So we're not talking about somebody who is going to go through the proper channels. We're talking about somebody who never wanted to do that. So that's why you have people like General Milley. You have people like General McMaster coming out saying, wait a minute, we had to stop him from his impulses.
Mm-hmm.
We had to tell him, no, Mr. President, you can't do that. And, you know, he said initially, I'm getting the best people.
That's what he said.
Within months, all these best people were gone.
And now, even the best people that he got is turning against him too.
Because they see what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Those that served in his administration saw his impulses. You know, here's a man that when you're told that the vice president is in danger, that these people want to kill him, he said, so what?
Mm-hmm. Pass me another burger.
I really don't care.
Mm.
He knew that there were people in the crowd that had weapons. He said, well, they're not here to hurt me.
Mm.
I don't care if they're going to hurt people inside the Capitol, as long as they're not hurting me
Mm-hmm.
and my family.
You know, they had flowers in those rifles.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we see the damage that was done, right? And
just to show how much of a conspiracy is, what's his name wife, Clarence Thomas.
mm-hmm.
You saw the big participation that she had, getting buses for these people to bring them there and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to me, this was all conspired.
Of course it was.
Mm-hmm.
And there's already people in place, right? These some of these election officials already are setting up ways to steal the election.
Yeah, steal the election.
Right.
And that's pretty much what they want to do. And this is why I would really, as an African-American, Black, whatever you want to call me, I just think that people that look like me, you need to get out there and you really need to make a vote, because when we do vote, we make a big difference. When I was born, on my birth certificate, it says Negro.
Uh-huh.
So that means I was born, we still lived in segregation. And during the life is growing up through the 60s and 70s, segregation was not a good thing. You got to see all the evils that people had. And this is what they want to bring us back to. They want to bring us back so that they can have more control. They want to take away whatever rights you think that you may have. Okay, they really want to control you, women, and everyone else, and myself included. And what was that poem that they had? First They Came for Me.
Oh yeah, that was written by, I believe, a German priest, and he talked about, well, they came for the communists. Well, I was a communist, so I said nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Then they came for the Jews. Well, I was Jewish, I said nothing. But when they came for me, there was no one to tell.
No one there to tell.
And that's what is going to happen if he's elected, right? People will be picked off. You start with the immigrants, then you go after political rivals,
Mm-hmm.
then you go after the mass media, right? And then, well, for people like you and I that have a radio show that
Mm-hmm.
speaks out,
Mm-hmm.
are we going to be allowed to speak?
Oh, hell no.
Right.
Because if we do, then you'll see the cops coming knocking on the door.
Absolutely.
Now back then, what did they call them? The SS?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you'd have. We would live in a society like that. We would live in a society like the apartheid. Now, Elon Musk, he should remember that, because he's in our age group. So we remember the apartheid.
Mm-hmm.
Now he comes from South Africa,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when he came here, he was supposed to go to Stanford, never went.
Mhm.
but he ended up staying. So he's an illegal immigrant.
He said that. He said he and his brother may have entered this country illegally.
And he is illegal.
Mhm.
So why are they not kicking him out?
Because he's got lots of money.
Yeah, but they're trying to sue him right now.
Well,
I think he should be indicted by the federal government for solicitation. He's trying to solicit your bribes, bribe you for your votes.
Yeah, he's offered $1 million to give people to vote as long as they are supporters of the First and Second Amendment. Code words for Trump supporters. Because he said, if Trump loses, I'm screwed. Because he has billions of dollars in contracts with,
Amazon, Prime. He owns Prime with Amazon.
No, that's Jeff Bezos.
That's Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. Okay.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos.
Those government contracts that he have are going to go away.
SpaceX, right? SpaceX and several other lucrative contracts he has, right? If Trump loses, the government may not renew those contracts. So he stands to lose billions of dollars. So he wants Trump to win in the worst way, right? So he's backing Trump, and there are some energy companies, oil companies, that are backing Trump. They gave him $1 billion because he already said drill, baby, drill. So
drill, baby, drilling.
Not in protected areas. Protected areas like Alaska, we're not drilling. He's saying these areas that there are reserves of oil, tap into it.
We don't have enough environmental things going on right now that we want to make it even worse.
Trump has, when he was president, he basically gutted the EPA because Trump said, well, climate change doesn't exist. The members of the Republican Party said, climate change, that don't exist, right? What do you want to call it? Climate change?
Chinese hoax.
Right. It's a democratic hoax, right? Just like COVID was a democratic hoax. But, what's happening with the climate? I mean, here we are, late October. It's the 30th of October. It was 75 degrees today. In the Midwest, record heat. We're going into the winter months. The trees are bare. Did you see
what it was today? What was it, 70-something degrees?
That's what I'm saying. The trees are bare, right?
I think the trees and the plants don't know what's going on.
Not only that, nature. Bears at this time are preparing to go into hibernation.
Right.
But the temperature's going back up.
Right.
Right. So is that going to throw up their cycle? Right. And the other animals as well.
Right.
So, I mean, something is going on. Sea levels are rising, and a lot of Pacific islands are threatened.
Right.
But you know what? The reason we're saying that there is no climate change is because the oil companies are backing these dudes, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying, listen, I'm going to donate heavily to your campaign, and you're going to pretend like this doesn't exist, that nothing is happening, right? Even though we see these storms that are more powerful, that are flattening entire cities,
right,
you're going to pretend like this is not happening, and I'm going to give you millions of dollars to be reelected.
Right. And then when it does happen, they'll probably ride down there and hand out some paper towels.
Throw them at people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Hi, my name is Kendall Stevenson. This is the Empowerment Show on GenesisRadio.com. Today with me, I've had Terry, that you got an opportunity to speak to. He jumped in and out from time to time. And my man, Ronald Yates. Now, you can tune in tomorrow to check out Ronald Yates. He's Reasons for Reasons. I believe you'll be here 6 to 7 tomorrow.
I will.
And that's Reasons for Reasons. And tomorrow, I believe he has a young man of Michael DeRozier.
Yep.
From the Black Caucus Party. Also, next week, we got coming up Dr. LaJoyce and DJ Indy. They'll both be in the studio, so we get an opportunity to chop it up with them. My co-host is usually Shaquana Terry, so she'll be here in my place because I need to take a break. All right. Thank you again for tuning in to GenesisRadio.com.